Hello again, Struck Club. The Hemomancer Necromancer is back. Hemomancer 2.0 is now using Bloodlance. It's more of a Bloodlancer Hemomancer, and it's stronger, it's better, it's more optimized, and it's ready for launch. If you wanted a Blood Mage build that is not using the Mist Explosion, the Mist Corpse Explosion combo, and that is not using Corpse Explosion in the first place, this is the build. This is me trying to avoid using the skills I've used for the Mist Explosion build, so I'm not using Blood Search, the Blood Nova kind of skill, and I'm not using the Corpse Explosion. I am using one type of minion, and that's the skeletons. But since I'll be using the skill on my skill bar, I decided I might as well use both types of skeletons at least. So even though I'm using one type of minion, it's actually two for the price of one. And the minions are not the main thing about this build. The main thing about this build would be the core skill, Bloodlance. We are building around Bloodlance and maximizing the core skill damage and the Bloodlance damage. And we're also stacking Overpower and Fortify. This is extremely fortified build. Even when it comes to minions, we picked minions that would help us with corpse generation, which helps us with generating Fortify thanks to Necrotic Carpus. And in general, it's more of a tanky yet DPSy build at the same time. So I hope you enjoyed. Buckle up, struck up, and let's go. Hemorrhage is our basic skill, single point there, maxing out Bloodlance, single point in Blood Mist, single point in Corpse Tendrils, and Blood Wave as an ultimate, which leaves us with one spot for minions. And I chose to use the skeletons because for corpse generation and generating 45 based on generating corpses, skeletons are decent. First of all, bone mages, when they die, they leave a corpse behind and fortify us. And since they will be dying a lot, they are bone mages, they will be using their HP to hit. We expect those to be our cycle of life, literally. It gives us 45 based on our max life. So yeah, they consume a corpse when we make them, and then they make one when they die. Skeletal Reapers, on the other hand, they have chance to create a corpse, 15% chance to create a corpse. So we want those to survive. Whereas with those, we want them to die, which means for those, we're not taking any HP increasing bonuses and stuff like that. As for the minion golem, the golem minion, we're sacrificing that one for crit damage. Now, I need to switch back to my spreadsheet because I want you to be able to see side by side the two versions of each skill. By the way, let's show you the icons. This is what Hemorrhage looks like. This is Bloodlance, Blood Mist, Corpse Tendrils, and Blood Wave together with Ratma's Vigor. Now, as you can see, Initiate's Hemorrhage is better for us when it comes to Fortify. This one's good attack speed, but I think this one's better for the build. With the Bloodlance, both versions are nice. This would make you waste less essence per cast of Bloodlance, and give you more attack speed. But I think this is better for us, guaranteed overpower, because overpower might not be a major part of this build, but it's a significant part of a build that will be fortifying and healing quite a bit. 3 points into Hued Flesh must have. We want to get as many corpses as possible. You'll see later in the Paragon segment why. Wood Mist just for escape mechanic if it's needed, a little bit of extra healing as well. And now there's two versions, and both versions are good for us. Whether we make it give us a corpse or whether we make it fortify, either version is okay. Either version is fine. So pick whichever you like. I personally prefer Dreadful Blood Mist. If I'm not mistaken, I put that one over here. Did I? Yeah, Dreadful Blood Mist. But if you go for Ghastly, it's not bad. Because Ghastly will create a corpse, and then creating a corpse thanks to Necrotic Carapace will fortify you when it's formed. While this one simply fortifies. So some people might say, okay, it's better to go Ghastly because this one only fortifies for 0.5 base life when it hits an enemy. So if there are not enough enemies, if it's a boss or whatever, but in any case, I think it still works fine because um, it fortifies you straight up. You don't have to rely on the corpse. So even if there are no corpses to be made, even if you don't get the 0.95. But again, experiment, see what you like more, because this one doesn't fortify for a small amount. At max level, it's 6% base life every time a corpse is formed. So this one is every 0.95 seconds, 6% life. So maybe it would be better to go ghastly. I need to experiment more with this to confirm it. Grim Harvest maxed out, Fueled by Death maxed out. Consuming a corpse generating essence, it's perfect. You will be spawning minions. Spawn minions, and if there are no minions to spawn, just use the priest, the skeleton priest. Unfortunately, Corpse Tendrils does not consume a corpse, even though it's a corpse skill. So consuming corpses, giving you damage and giving you essence, you have to rely on the skeletons for that one. Then skeleton warrior mastery, we want those skeletons to be a little tanky. As I mentioned, the reapers. Corpse tendrils, only 1 point with vulnerability. Incredibly important to pick the vulnerability here, because we rely mostly on this to apply vulnerability. There are other places from where we can apply vulnerability, but when we start a fight, we start with corpse tendrils as soon as we get the first corpse ready, and it's nice. Now, gruesome mending only a single point, and transfusion only a single point. Where as coalesced blood, drain vitality, tides of blood maxed out. This one already said maxed out. Blood wave maxed out. And we are taking bonded in essence. And that's not necessary. If you don't like it, you can only put 1 point and try to put the points elsewhere. But I do recommend picking 3 points here, so you can save 2 points if you don't want bonded in essence. Because this would heal your skeleton mages, which again you want those to die, so you can fortify from them dying. Whereas on the other hand, you want to heal the warriors, so it's a tough balancing act there. So your minions can't lose more than 75, 50, 25 of their maximum life from a single hit. You obviously max this one out for the sake of the Reapers. Ratmus Vigor, needless to say, after being healthy for 15 seconds, your neck blood skill overpowers. And you can stack this with the blood lens that overpowers after casting it 8 times. So you will have some guaranteed overpowers. That's why overpower damage might not be a major fact, a major reason to build around it, but it's still a good thing to stack up. So I selected 4 unique items. One major, which is Ring of Starless Skies. So this one should be your highest priority. Ring of Starless Skies gives you shadow and lightning resistance. It also gives you the following bonus. Each consecutive core skill cast reduces the resource cost of your next core skill by 5 to 10% for a maximum of 30. So if you get lucky with the 10% roll, that means with 3 casts you would already max it out. And it's nice. It's nice for Bloodlands. It works very well with it, with this specific build, so you can spam as much Bloodlands as possible. It also gives some good stuff, all stats, danger to crowd control to enemies, lucky hit chance, core skill damage. We won't have much crowd control. Sure, we have stunning and stuff um, from the corpse tendrils, but in general, you shouldn't rely on that. The other 3 items, there are ways to. I try to make it as painless as possible when it comes to reworking stuff, so they fit into the build just by swatting out whatever was there in that SWAT, which is an amulet called Melted Heart of Selig. Gain maximum resource. In addition, when you take damage, drain X resource for every 1% of life you would have lost instead, which is kind of a mana shield, an essence shield. An essence shield which works nicely, but if you feel like you don't have enough essence to DPS as a result of this item, it might not be as great. Although it does give some amazing bonuses, and it does give resource generation, and you can combine that with some other things. I always recommend and include a Shaco Harlequin crest helmet in my setups, especially when you're doing Hell Tides. This crafting material drop rate is something you can't get elsewhere. And this also gives cooldown reduction and 2 rank stall skills and damage reduction, even maximum life. So it's a good fit. And then there's Temerity. While injured, your potion also grants 30% movement speed for 2 seconds. Sure, okay, a standard thing here. But then effects that heal you beyond 100% life grant you a barrier up to 40 to 80% of your maximum life that lasts for 30 seconds. Now, consider that this is a build that will have a lot of blood orbs and a lot of healing from those. And there's also a little bit of healing from blood means. That means you would have Fortify and a little bit of extra barrier. So the tankiness and survivability will be there. This also gives you between 2 to 3 extra potion charges. It also gives you potion drop rate. It also gives you a lucky hit chance to heal, so additional healing and increased healing received. And I've decided that it would be nice to include Imbiber in the Paragon boards. More about that later. Now that you know the uniques, the legendary aspects would look something like this. On the helmet, we have Aspect of Might, which eventually you might want to replace with Harlequin's Crest. Then Smiting Aspect in the amulet, eventually replaced by Melted Heart of Selig. Chest is the Viscous Aspect. Pants, Aspect of the Embaumer, eventually replaced by Temerity. Gloves, Aspect of Ratmas Chosen. Boots, Exploiter's Aspect. Ring 1 aspect of Grasping Veins, Ring 2 Bloodseeker's aspect, eventually replaced by the top unique for this setup. I consider Ring of Starless Skies. One-handed weapon, aspect of Hungry Blood. And if you're using two-handed, obviously aspect of Hungry Blood, which means you would have to sacrifice the offhand Cadaverous aspect. And here's the thing. Many places list the offhand for Necro only as a shield, only as defensive utility. But if I remember correctly, if you put an offhand focused item, it counts as a weapon, which means it gives you offensive aspects. That's why I put cadaverous aspect. But I didn't pay much attention during the server slam on my Necro to double check this because I didn't expect that people wouldn't list offensive on their calculators and stuff. So if they've changed it, maybe it's just defensive and utility, but I don't think they did. I think you can still do offensive as long as you're not using a shield, but you're using a focus offhand item. The cadaverous aspect there. Now let's talk about which one gives what. First of all, as you can see here, we've got Blood Seekers, which is the 15 to 20% multiplicative increase damage to its primary target per once target for Blood Lance. Since it pierces, it will hit multiple enemies. It's not as important. That's why eventually it gets replaced. Hungry Blood, on the other hand, I don't want to replace. When Blood Lance hits an enemy that is already lanced, it has 10 to 20% chance to fire a Blood Lance at a nearby enemy. And if you're one-on-one versus bosses and you keep spamming lance on the enemy, it will keep triggering extra lances. Then whenever your blood skills overpower, you gain attack speed for 4 seconds. This is Ratmus chosen, it's on the gloves, it's not something that we replace unless you decide to include something like a Frostburn or something, but I'd rather stick to that. Cadaverous, again, something that we don't replace. Consuming a corpse increases the damage of your next core skill by 5 to 10% multiplicative up to 25 to 50% multiplicative. Smiting aspect, again, something that eventually gets replaced by the unique amulet. You have 12.5 to 25% multiplicative increase crit strike chance against injured enemies while you're healthy. You gain 25 to 50% multiplicative increase crowd control duration. The crowd control duration is not as important for us because we don't have as much, but the crit strike chance is good to use until it gets replaced. Grasping Veins, something we don't remove from the build, it stays there forever, which is 10 to 20% crit strike chance for 6 seconds when you cast Corpse Tendrils, and you deal 30 to 60% increased multiplicative bonus crit damage to enemies damaged by Corpse Tendrils. Definitely amazing thing. And considering Corpse Tendrils also makes enemies vulnerable, it makes things even better. Exploiter aspect, something I love including in every build. 20% increased crowd control duration, again, something we don't care much about, but it does stack nicely with that one from here. And then increased damage to unstoppable enemies. Amazing because bosses, unless you're super hardcore going into the crowd control duration and skills, you will be fighting bosses mostly during their unstoppable phase, especially world bosses. Now, Viscous Aspect increasing the maximum number of skeleton mages. I decided to go for maximum skeleton mages here. This is optional. You can put something else if you don't like it, but more skeleton mages, more of them dying, more 45 for us. I think it's nice. And that means we can consume more corpses in a burst there, if they're dead. Now, basic skills grant 25% damage reduction for 4 seconds this is something that, again, eventually it gets replaced by the Shaco, by the Hurricane Crest. So if you don't want this, put something else there temporarily. Whereas Aspect of the Embaumer, I don't recommend replacing. It is not a must-have, sure, but I would strongly recommend having this one. Consuming a corpse has chance to spawn a blood orb. Um, it's nice. It is definitely nice. And again, eventually it will get replaced. But before it gets replaced by Temerity, use that one here. But again, it's not 100% must have. If you really think something fits better for what you're doing here at that time, I think it will be fine. It's kind of straightforward, but playing the server slam in the previous betas, I've realized that emeralds for the weapon might be the best option during boss fights. It's very difficult to keep crowd control on bosses, and overpower. While it might be good, it won't happen a lot. Ultimate skill damage, long cooldown for Blood Wave, just not as worth it. So Emerald is my top choice for the weapons on boss fights. Outside of boss fights, you could consider maybe Sapphire as well. While Ruby, Diamond, and Skull are just options for you if you're really unlucky and you can't get good emeralds and you can't craft good emeralds and stuff like that. Which so far I don't think gems would be a massive problem from what we've seen in the betas. On the armor, Ruby is my top choice. After that, you have stuff like Skull and Sapphire to work well with the setup. We don't have much barrier generation except for that one thing that I showed you, but it's not an awful choice. But I'd avoid it. I would go Ruby, Skull, or Sapphire, or Ruby, Sapphire, and then Skull. In this order of priority, Skull the least priority. Although both those are probably almost equal in terms of usefulness. And then for the jewelry, Diamond, unless you need a specific resistance. There are just so many. There's like 300 almost total rows. I've managed to shorten the list to 44 useful ones for this setup and split those into a lower priority one and a higher priority one. In the higher priority one, I don't have time right now to separate it by SWOT, by equipment SWOT, like what goes in the gloves, in the helmet, and so on. Because first of all, I don't know all the information about what can roll where. Second of all, again, it's another thing I could have done is making the best ones at the top, the worst ones at the bottom, but that's not how it is. Things over here might be just as important as things down here. But there are keywords that to make it easy for you to look for things for your gear. Remember those keywords: crit strike chance, crit strike damage, and damage. Top tier stuff, ranks to certain skills, top tier stuff. Lucky hit chance, definitely good. Now, what categories and damage types? For damage types, you're looking something that says blood or physical. In terms of categories, core, top priority. Macabre, corpse, maybe, or corruption, maybe not as good as core, but if you don't get core levels, you could get um, um, bonuses to those. Again, that's for levels, crit chance, anything else that mentions that category. Basic skill and ultimate are bottom tier in terms of priority. But core is top tier. We're building around the core skill, which is a physical blood skill. So another thing to consider is elites as a keyword. There are certain damage types to elites. There's crit strike chance with certain damage types to elites. Damage after killing an elite, damage reduction after killing an elite, damage reduction from elites. And then there's close enemies and vulnerable enemies and crowd controlled enemies. Again, crit chance, crit damage, damage to those types of enemies. Vulnerable should be bigger priority if you wanna be boss fighting. Then there's fortify related bonuses like generation, damage while fortified, chance when struck to fortify. Then there's overpower stuff. Again, there's overpower damage with certain skills. And again, Bone Storm shouldn't be here. I need to remove it. It's a leftover. And then damage with certain skill categories, which again works nicely. Um, and then there's damage to swords, don't immobilize like a specific type of crowd control. This is very bottom tier of the high priority. Then crit strike chance against those, again, very bottom tier of the high priority. And then there's this from the minion bonuses. I included only this one. There's 5-6 more worth it ones, but I included only this one. Crit strikes from your minions have up to X% chance to reduce the enemy's damage dealt by X% for N seconds. Pretty solid, pretty nice. Damage to healthy, damage to injured, damage while healthy. Not as amazing. Okay, this one we already have it up there. I always do 2 stages of what they would look like. The first stage is what you would expect at level 89, considering you have 0 renown, renown-based Paragon points. But you can get up to 20 points from renown, which means 5 levels earlier you should have this setup, which means at level 84, actually at level 85, pardon me, no, actually level 84, I was right the first time. At level 84, this is what your setup would look like. As you can see, I've even added the final board here to make it easier to compare. This is at level 100 with the extra 20 points from Renown, which is 220 total Paragon points, all of them spent, squeezing all the boards I could think of dry. As usual, I'm focusing on prioritizing getting bonuses from the gem socket clusters instead of wasting pointlessly points reaching certain legendary, disappointing, mind you, legendary nodes. Here is how I do it. First of all, starting here, focusing on the intelligence, getting damage and HP, skipping this 1 HP. And normally something I do not do in builds, but in this case I made an exception, is putting some of those grants bonuses to all magic or bonuses to all rare. Normally I go for stuff that gives you bonuses based on how many uh, nodes, int, dex, strength, whatever nearby you have taken. This time around we're granting bonuses to the magic nodes, and we're taking blood orbs fortify you for X% of your maximum life. 6.7% to be exact, and it's amazing, good getting this early to keep yourself fortified so you can keep overpowering and doing good stuff. This is the route I recommend taking. Going here for the int, taking this, then going here for that int, and then going here for this int, taking the damages on the way. Unfortunately, you have to pick a willpower node. Obviously, it's better to pick this one than that one. Um, and we're not taking this trend, so we go around here, and this should give us 40 intelligence with this and all those here. Then you move on to the next bloodbath board. Unfortunately, as good as this bonus might be, still kind of underwhelming. Not as good enough to make me consider spending points to go this way. That's probably close to 20 points, or this way another, either 15 or 20 points. Not worth it, in my opinion. So you're going this way. You're entering through this side, and you're going for essence here. So in the bloodbath, you're swatting essence, and essence is a dex socket. It gives you 19.2 critical strike damage for core skills, as well as critical strikes deal 22 increased damage to enemies that are not healthy. So not just injured, but also anything between injured and healthy. So you're going here for this dex. Dex, taking this. And then you're going for this dex, damage while fortified, intelligence, taking these 2 dex. Then dex, 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 and you're exiting from here with the intelligence on this side, and linking this to the flesh eater. And again, flesh eater, it's decent-ish, but is it worth those extra points? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points just so you can get this after consuming 5 corpses for 6 seconds. And this build doesn't have corpse explosion that consumes 5 corpses in a single cast with that item, with the Black River. So I don't think this is worth those 8 points to get it. If you think it's worth it, you could try and remove them later in the final phase when we are filling, and take this for yourself. Because 8 points not the same as 20 or 15 points. I might consider this one. So it's up to you. I personally decided to invest points into other places that are much more rewarding. Now this one, another dex board exploit. Again, vulnerable damage, very big thing against bosses. So 7.2 of it for every 5 dex you get here. We have 44, as you can see, in this board. And dealing damage to vulnerable enemies increases your damage by 1% multiplicative up to 10 for 6 seconds. So we're entering through here with the dex. Int, socket. After you socket this, you go dex, dex, and then dex. That's 4 dex right off the bat. After that, you're going damage to elites, dex, damage to elites, dex, damage to elites, int, dex. Better to go that way than taking this one. This one is not necessary. Um, so by saving that 1 point, we're going up there, int, dex, dex, int. Then we're connecting to blood begets blood. Another one that is kind of underwhelming. 15% increased damage for 5 seconds for blood orbs, and that doesn't seem to stack much. Only stacking 3 times 5 for total of 15. If I could connect it easily, if there was something over here connecting it with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe I could consider it, but without that, just not worth it. You can get much more out of your points than going for this one. So over here, we are socketing Dominate. So we're going here with those 3 int points entering through the decks. Dominate is a willpower um, gem. So we want to be as close as possible to all the willpower. That is why we're entering from here, which gives us access to those 2 willpowers. But first we're getting the socket. So 1, 2, 3, 4, get the socket. Then get the quick willpower nodes, which is this is willpower, this is willpower, this is willpower you can get right away. Now that you're over here, you're going for this overpower damage willpower dex. This unfortunately you have to pick one of those 2 dexes. So I decided to go for this one. So you're taking this dex, then damage for X seconds after picking a blood orb, intelligence, overpower. Going here, blood orb healing. You have to pick this one unfortunately, or go for the strength. I decided to pick this one. Willpower, blood orb healing, intelligence. This blood orb healing is not needed, but I decided to take it and exit through here rather than exiting through there. It will be better that way, in my opinion. And later we are actually coming back here to take those notes. So it's pretty okay. I'm doing it that way. I'm doing 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. In my opinion. But alternatively, you can do 1, 2, 3, 4 up here instead of those here. Okay, so taking taking all that willpower here in this way, and moving on to the next board, which is Scent of Death, which again not as great, but thankfully it's easy to reach. It's only gonna cost us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points extra. But before that, you're taking this glyph socket in this way with entering through this willpower, and we're putting over here Imbiber. Imbiber will also go very well with Temerity and with some other items that we picked. This one, I'm taking it to increase damage while healthy, but it also gives us increased potion healing. And with that unique item, that could give us between 1 to 3 um, extra potions, even better. Um, so entering through here, taking willpower, int, taking the socket, and next take this willpower, that willpower. Then go down, damage to injured, willpower. Damage to injured intelligence, willpower, damage to injured enemies, and then int that willpower and exit. Well, not exit, but go and take Scent of Death. And at this point, you're done with the first stage, and you're moving on to the second stage of the process, which is taking the last board, which is um, this one, Cult Leader. But we're not taking it for the minion damage bonuses and stuff. We don't care about this thing here. We are taking it for skeleton mages bonuses, not for this specific bonus here. It's gonna be pointless to go there. Too many points. But we're gonna make our mages a little stronger. And we're gonna give them a little bit of resistances. Although I don't really want the resistances as much. I did want the other bonuses, so I did that for them. Because yeah, they will die a lot, but at least they should do some damage if you're taking them right. Um, So we're going into Dex. And I normally, if I had better choices that are not shadow damage or bone skills, or golem, I would have taken another board, but there aren't any other boards that work that great with this build. So damage to your reduction to your minions, damage reduction to your minions, intelligence damage reduction to your minions. You're taking this route here, and again, this is intelligence board, so we're going for int. So after you take this, there's 1, 2, 3 int right away. You've already taken this 10 int here. Then you pick 1 point here, minion damage, and then 10 int. Then we're going here, willpower 3 int points, and then here dex int, int. And after that, you're returning all the way to some of the other boards to take some stuff to fill in. It might be easier to show you in this way so you can see where the differences are. First of all, you can see I filled in stuff here on the way to connecting those boards. I have filled in here with crit strike damage, damage to healthy enemies, and more crit strike damage and damage to healthy enemies. The full cluster there has been taken. And as you can see, there are some things I have taken here and here. So over here, as you see, I have done those 1 to 3 points, and then lucky hit chance, 5% chance to execute injured non-elites, as well as attack speed. This whole cluster, and then that other cluster here for damage to injured, crit strike damage, and damage to injured. Again, very good cluster in my opinion. And as I showed you, this cluster here, damage while healthy, and damage for X seconds after picking a blood orb. Those are where we filled the points, and this should be all of the changes. I hope I didn't miss any of those.
To get notified when I upload more content like this one or other builds and guides for Wooter and not so Wooter games, you can subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button to not miss out on notifications. As well as keep in mind there's something called memberships on YouTube, which lets you be a paying member for my channel to get access to perks such as emotes and badges made by me, as well as the option to get one-on-one tutoring for the very basics of Adobe Photoshop, Premiere and After Effects. And memberships can be cancelled at any time if you no longer wanna be a member. Thanks for watching all the way until the end, Struck Club. Keep it cool until next time, and goodbye.